Today's subject is Gotti, the first movie to be backed by the company MoviePass. We are definitely in good hands. Alright, kids, I know Halloween's over, but I've got one of those one sentence horror stories for you. You ready? Alright, here we go. Today we're watching a John Travolta passion project. Boo! I'm ridiculously late to the party on this one, since I didn't feel like driving 90 minutes to Grand Rapids to see this one in the theater. And by this time, all the critics have beaten this movie and John Travolta's performance in it to a bloody pulp months ago, and the Razzie buzz is in full force. Seriously, this thing's got a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. For comparison, Battlefield Earth has a 3. But John Travolta's been such a big part of Nuke the Shark that I need to give my own take on this one. Well, it's a mess. Every year, we get a movie like Gotti. 2014 had Dying of the Light. 2015 had Fant Four Stick. 2016 had Suicide Squad. 2017 had The Snowman. And now, here in 2018, we have this movie. Now, what do all of these movies have in common? Well, they were all ruined by the same thing. Rabid Wolverines in the editing room. There might be a cut of Gotti out there that's actually okay. It's probably not good, but it's probably watchable, at least. Here and there, watching the cut that we do have of Gotti, you have problems with acting and cinematography and things like that. But 90% of this movie's problems can be attributed to comically poor post-production choices. Like this scene that takes place in the 80s, in which Gotti and his buddies are having a big 4th of July celebration, and Don't Stop the Party by Pitbull is playing. It's mixed in a way that makes it sound like it's actually playing while the events are playing in front of you. It sounds like the characters are actually listening to it at the party. But here's the thing, guys, and listen closely. After researching this for hours, I came across a shocking truth. Don't Stop the Party by Pitbull was released in 2012. There's no way these characters would be listening to this song unless John Gotti had a time machine and decided to go to 2012 and bring back our absolute worst music. Actually, if I can level with you, I don't really hate Pitbull. I can't hate him anymore. Pop music's gotten so much worse since he was popular. I actually miss the guy. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, bad music choices. Well, the songs are either bizarrely inappropriate, like that Pitbull song, or really obvious. Like, for example, playing House of the Rising Sun during Gotti's funeral. Oops, 16-year-old spoilers, Gotti dies. I do give them credit for using the Animals version, not a crappy cover like Hangman did, since the song is public domain, and it would have been free to do that. Although, MoviePass is probably wishing they saved some money there. Alright, but all those are minor complaints. What makes Gotti unwatchable for the first hour is the constant, non-stop timeline jumps. There are more timeline jumps in this movie than there are obvious stunt doubles in Choose Your Bruce Willis movie. I'm not against non-linear narratives at all. That one other Travolta movie you may have heard of pulled that type of story off nicely. But I have my limits. There are only so many shifts I can take before watching the movie starts feeling like work. But let's get into specifics, shall we? We start in present-day New York. The ghost of John Gotti tells us that New York is the greatest effing city in the world. And he started in the gutter and worked his way up to becoming an infamous crime boss. Timeline jump number 1 takes us to 1973. Gotti performs a hit for a boss and becomes a made man. This takes about 4 minutes. We don't know what his ghost meant about starting in the gutter. We don't know his motivations for joining the mob or anything about the guy. Just bam, less than 10 seconds into the film and he's a bona fide gangster. Timeline jump number 2 takes us to 2000. Gotti is in prison and he's old and dying. Wait a second. What? We figure out what's going on eventually, but your first thought is, has he been in prison for 30 years for that hit we just saw? What happened to becoming a boss? Okay, so he's in prison for something else, and he's talking to Gotti Jr. about him taking a plea deal. What did Jr. do? Why is he on trial? Why is Gotti Sr. in prison? I don't know. Jump a third time to some other time. We're not told when. Eventually, we're able to put together that it's in the 70s. Gotti is in prison for the hit he did earlier, something else. We saw a 2-second long police chase earlier, but structurally, this movie is such a mess that I'm not sure if it was right after the hit, or a flash forward to another time he was put in prison. He talks with his family about what his kids want to be for Halloween. It's a pretty poor way to set up the family who are supposed to be a pretty important part of the movie. Travolta's monopolizing the scene with his hammy acting and with his ridiculous wise guy accent. His wife hardly gets to say anything. We don't even learn his kids' names. He gets out and hangs out at home for a little bit, and then we jump a fourth time back to when he was in prison. We watch him whack someone while on leave to go to the dentist. Why not put that before the last scene? It would have made so much more sense and you wouldn't have had to show him leave prison only to put him back in. And jump once again, and guess what? We're back to him being old and dying in prison. The non-linear structure is so poor, and the scenes are so rushed that it's almost impossible to follow what's happening. Then we jump back to 1979, and we come to my next big problem with Gotti. It's impossible to keep track of all of its characters. In this segment of the movie, we're introduced to like 10 characters through either those tacky text flashes on the screen that say things like Johnny quotation marks, mob nickname, Doe. Or Travolta asks his buddy Stacy Keach who a person is, and he gives him a 2-second expositional rundown. Yes, you need to keep track of pretty much all of these people. Jump a 7th time back to Gotti being old and in prison, and jump an 8th time to a scene in which Gotti's son Frankie is killed in a car accident. I don't want to be insensitive here. Frankie was a real kid and his death was a tragedy regardless of whether his dad was a degenerate mob boss. But in the context of the movie, looking at it as objectively as we can, we just don't care. Frankie had like 3 lines before he's killed. We don't know him as a character. His dad, John Gotti, isn't established well enough for us to care either. We've spent 35 minutes with him at this point, but it's all zipped by so quickly that our emotions can't register anything because our brains are still trying to catch up with the plot. And here's another thing that bugs me. Frankie is avenged off screen. His killer is whacked and we just see a news report of the aftermath. They throw so much crap in this movie, just so many scenes that go nowhere, and they cut out this potentially very emotional scene. Priorities, movie! Priorities! Alright, we then jump to 1984, and I've seen this movie twice now. And I truthfully have no idea what's going on in this scene. Gotti goes to a Christmas party and he yells at a guy in a parking lot. I have no clue what's happening. Alright, this is getting kind of monotonous, so let's pick up the pace a little bit here. We jump again, and Stacy Keach dies, and Gotti decides he's going to whack the big boss Paul, because he doesn't like him. Now, Paul's had 15 seconds or so of screen time, so we the audience haven't been able to form an opinion on him. We don't know what he's like, but we're supposed to be rooting for Gotti for some reason, and he wants to kill Paul, so go for it, I guess. He does so in like 5 minutes because this movie brushes over everything, and Gotti becomes the boss in his place. Here's where the movie's single biggest failure as a biopic becomes apparent. We don't learn what Gotti did as the boss. We spend so long building up to this moment. By the time he gets to the top, the movie's ready to show us his downfall. I don't know why Gotti is infamous, or so revered, or why his ghost said that I will never see another one like him if I live to be 2000. Why does this movie exist? John Travolta is very bad in this. I expect him to be over the top, and I often enjoy it when he's over the top. But Gotti is a movie that wants me to take it seriously. And it fails by casting a lead actor who is impossible to take seriously. The direction is terrible. Visually, the movie is gray and plain. And it honestly looks kind of low resolution, like someone downloaded it off YouTube. Overall, Gotti is a complete mess with its bad acting, rushed story, and terrible, terrible editing. And it deserves all of the hate it's been getting. It's as bad as you've heard. It doesn't even work in a so bad it's good way like some people have said. It's so bad it's confusing. It's so bad it's frustrating. But nowhere does it even approach anything resembling good. I'm giving this one a 2 out of 10.